The decisive answer is almost always wrong. That's the single most useful sentence about people questions, and it's a third of your exam. 8 tasks, 33%, and a scoring pattern that punishes exactly the instinct that gets you promoted. And by the end of these 8 scenarios, you'll see one structure repeating underneath all of them, which is worth more than the 8 answers.
Hey everyone, Erica here. 8 scenarios, 1 per people task, all of them written by us for teaching. None of these is a real exam item, and none of them ever was.
We've walked the content across this series. This is the reps, and the reps are where the mindset either holds or collapses.
This is Kai. Scenario 1, Task 1, Common Vision. Your project has a signed charter. In 3 separate conversations this week, 3 team members describe the project goal differently. Nobody is arguing. They simply aren't describing the same thing.
And the tempting answer is to resend the charter or run a session where you present the goal again. Louder, clearer, with slides.
Erica, that loses, and the outline tells you why in its own words. Task 1 asks you to break down situations to identify the root cause of a misunderstanding of the vision. Root cause, not repetition.
Because if 3 people built 3 different pictures from one document, the document isn't the fix. Something upstream produced the divergence, and repeating yourself will produce it again.
So the right first move is diagnostic. Find out where each of those 3 readings came from, then correct the source. And there's a concrete way to run that diagnosis rather than just nodding at the word. Ask each of the 3 what they think the project will have changed once it's finished. Not what it delivers, what it changes.
Because a charter usually states outputs well and outcomes badly, so 3 people reading one charter can agree completely on the deliverable and disagree entirely on the point of it.
Which is the root cause the enabler is pointing you at, not carelessness. A document that was specific where it didn't need to be and vague where it did.
Scenario 2, Task 2, Conflict. 2 team leads have escalated the same disagreement about integration sequencing to you 3 weeks running. Each time you make a call, and each time it comes back.
And the appealing answer is to make a firmer decision. Put it in writing and tell them it's final.
Which has already failed twice, so a third helping of the same thing isn't a strategy. The outline asks you to identify conflict sources and analyze the context for the conflict.
A conflict that returns after resolution was never actually about the thing being resolved. You have been deciding the surface argument 3 times while the source sat untouched.
And here's how you would actually find the source. Notice what the 2 of them have in common that's not the argument. Same deadline pressure, same shared resource, same unclear ownership boundary.
Because a recurring conflict between 2 competent people is usually a structural problem wearing a personal costume. 2 leads fighting about sequencing 3 weeks running are probably both being measured on something that makes the other one's sequence expensive.
And the outline gives you the finishing move too. Establish an environment that fosters adherence to common ground rules. Ground rules, not a ruling. You're being asked to build the thing that prevents the 4th escalation.
Erica has been pushing on something all week that goes underneath both of those, so she should ask it.
It does go underneath. Why does the exam keep punishing the decisive answer?
2 scenarios in, and both correct answers were diagnostic rather than decisive. Hold that, because it's going to happen 6 more times. Let me pause for just a second, because this genuinely helps. If you are getting value here, hit that like button, then subscribe and ring the bell. It costs you nothing, and it is the single biggest thing that keeps these videos coming. Scenarios 3 and 4, and these 2 are where strong practitioners lose points, because both wrong answers are things a good manager would actually do.
Which is the whole difficulty. Not wrong in life, wrong against the task.
Professor Lindquist is at the desk for these.
Nearly, though I'd sharpen it. They aren't wrong in life either. They're premature in life, and the exam simply measures the ordering more strictly than your workplace does.
Scenario 3, Task 3, Leading the Team. A senior engineer with 15 years of experience routes every technical decision to you for sign-off. Small ones. Decisions well inside her competence.
And the appealing answer is to tell her she's empowered to decide these herself. which is a sentence I've said out loud in real life more than once.
And which changes nothing, because empowerment isn't conferred by announcement. If she's routing decisions upward, something is making the act of deciding feel unsafe or unclear. Telling her it's safe doesn't remove whatever that's.
Kai, the right move is to find out what she's protecting herself from. A decision that got reversed. A blame pattern from a previous project. An unclear boundary about who owns what.
Then remove that, and the empowerment follows without needing to be declared.
And there's a diagnostic question that usually cracks it open. Ask her which decision she would have made if you had not been available, and then ask what would have happened to her afterwards.
That second half is the one that matters. A person routing decisions upward almost always has a clear answer about the decision, and a much less comfortable answer about the consequence. The consequence is what you're being asked to remove.
And notice that the exam isn't asking you to be nice here. It is asking you to be accurate about cause. A pep talk misdiagnoses the situation and therefore fails, not because it's soft.
Scenario 4, Task 4, Engaging Stakeholders. A regional director has stopped attending the steering committee. She has raised no objection. Her team has quietly kept using the old process.
And the option that pulls hardest is escalation. She is senior, she's non-responsive, the schedule is exposed, so go to her executive.
Which is the single most reliable wrong answer in the people domain. Escalation isn't forbidden, it's sequenced. You haven't yet spoken to her, and the outline's engagement enablers all sit before that step, not after it.
And practically, escalating first guarantees the relationship you needed is now worse than when you started.
So engage her directly, find out what changed, and only escalate if direct engagement genuinely fails. And when you do engage her, the shape of the first question decides the whole conversation. Not why have you stopped coming, which is an accusation with a question mark on it.
Ask instead what changed for her region, and you'll usually discover the disengagement was rational, a commitment she couldn't meet, a resource she lost, a directive from above that contradicted the program. Silence from a competent person is nearly always protective.
And at that point, you've something escalation could never have produced, which is a real reason. If you do end up escalating later, you now escalate with a cause instead of a complaint.
Professor Lindquist, thank you. Premature rather than wrong is a kinder and more accurate way to put it than I had.
Order is the content here, not virtue.
Scenario 5, Task 5, Aligning Expectations. Your sponsor believes the first release includes reporting. Your team has been building it without reporting for 6 weeks, and both parties think they're agreed.
Nobody is being difficult. That's what makes it dangerous. Two consistent, confident, incompatible pictures.
And the tempting answer is to add reporting, because the sponsor is the sponsor and it's easier than the conversation.
Which quietly commits 6 weeks of unplanned work without anybody deciding to. The right move is to surface the mismatch and align the definition explicitly before another line gets written.
And notice the cost of waiting. Every day the two pictures stay unreconciled, the eventual correction gets more expensive.
And there's a specific move that beats a general conversation. Don't ask the sponsor whether reporting is in scope, because you'll get a yes and learn nothing about why the team thinks otherwise.
Ask both sides to describe what the first release lets a user do on the Monday after it ships. Two incompatible pictures can't survive that question because it forces the abstraction down onto something observable.
And it surfaces the mismatch without anybody having to be wrong out loud, which is why it works in real rooms as well as on the exam.
So is a signature the same thing as satisfaction? Scenario 6, Task 6, Customer Satisfaction. Your external customer signs off each milestone on time. In a corridor conversation, their program manager mentions the team feels the releases are landing without enough warning.
And the sign-offs are all clean. On paper, this project is healthy.
So the appealing answer is to keep going because the formal artifact says everything is fine and a corridor comment isn't a defect.
Which mistakes a signature for satisfaction? Those are different things, and the task is about the second one.
And the corridor comment is the most valuable data you've received all month, precisely because it didn't come through the formal channel. Somebody told you a truth the process wasn't surfacing.
So act on it while acting is still cheap. Ask, understand the warning they actually want, and adjust. And be careful with the corridor comment because there's a wrong way to act on it too. Taking it straight to the customer's leadership as a complaint burns the person who told you.
So you use it as a prompt rather than as evidence. You go and ask the customer directly how much notice before a release would actually help them, which is a question you could reasonably have asked anyway.
And now the informal signal has become a formal conversation without anybody being exposed. That protection matters because the next honest comment depends on it. And before we get to the last two, notice that neither of those correct answers involved doing more work. Both involved having a conversation earlier than felt necessary.
The last two scenarios, and they're the two that show up in real projects most often and get studied least.
Knowledge transfer and communication. Tasks 7 and 8.
Professor Lindquist, back to the desk.
And both are quietly about the same thing, which is that a document isn't a transfer. People believe artifacts carry understanding. They carry a record of understanding, which isn't the same object at all.
Scenario 7, Task 7. Your only engineer who understands the legacy integration resigns with 4 weeks' notice. He is willing and cooperative.
So the obvious answer is to have him document everything before he leaves. 4 weeks, a wiki, done.
And in 4 weeks you'll hold a document that nobody can use because the parts he couldn't think to write down are exactly the parts you needed. Tacit knowledge doesn't survive being asked to describe itself.
The transfer that works is pairing. Put someone alongside him on real work for those 4 weeks, and let the question surface what a document would never have contained.
Document as a byproduct if you like. But the pairing is the mechanism, and the wiki is the receipt. And there's a way to make those 4 weeks much sharper than generic pairing. Have the newcomer do the work while he watches, rather than the other way round.
Which inverts what most organizations do, and it's the whole difference. When the expert drives, the newcomer learns what the expert remembers to narrate. When the newcomer drives, the expert is forced to intervene at exactly the points that were never written down.
Every intervention is a discovery. You're effectively using the gaps in the newcomer's understanding as a search tool for the gaps in the documentation. Scenario 8, Task 8, Communication. Your weekly status report has been green for 5 weeks. In your one-to-ones, 3 of your 6 team members have separately mentioned they think the integration date is unrealistic.
And the report isn't lying. Every metric on it's genuinely green.
Which is the most interesting failure in this set. The artifact is accurate, and the situation isn't. Your reporting instrument is measuring things that are fine, while the thing that's not fine has no field to appear in.
So the wrong answer is to keep reporting green because it's defensible, and the also wrong answer is to mark it red on a hunch.
The right move is to change what the communication carries. Get the concern into a form the report can hold, which usually means naming it as a risk with an owner rather than a feeling in a one-to-one.
And the practical version of fixing the instrument is smaller than it sounds. You're not redesigning reporting. You're adding one line that can hold the thing your team already told you.
A risk with a named owner and a date is a field the report can carry. A worry expressed in a one-to-one isn't. The information didn't change between those two forms. Only its ability to travel did.
And that's why marking the whole project red would also have been wrong. Red isn't more honest, it's just louder. It still fails to say what the actual concern is or who is holding it.
Precision beats volume, which is arguably the entire communication task in 4 words. Professor Lindquist, thank you. A document carries a record of understanding, not understanding is the sentence I'd put above a desk.
Pair them. Then let the wiki be a souvenir.
So the pattern, which is the thing worth taking away rather than the 8 answers.
Every one of those 8 correct answers was diagnostic. Not one of them was a decision. Across all 8 people tasks, the exam asked you to understand before you act.
River. That answers what Erica asked at the top. The decisive answer keeps losing because a decision made before diagnosis is a guess wearing authority.
Which isn't a moral point, it's a practical one. 3 of our scenarios had the manager already deciding, repeatedly, and getting the same problem back.
The second thread is sequence. Escalation was wrong in scenario 4, not because escalating is bad, but because it came before engagement.
So when an option feels right but you haven't yet done the thing that comes before it, that's your signal. The exam is testing the order.
And the third thread is the artifact confusion. A charter isn't shared understanding. A signature isn't satisfaction. A wiki isn't knowledge. A green report isn't a healthy project.
4 of the 8 turned on exactly that distinction, which makes it the highest yield idea in the people domain.
There's a fourth thread worth naming, and it's the quietest one. In 6 of those 8 scenarios, nobody was behaving badly. No villain, no incompetence, no obstruction.
Which is deliberate, and it's where instinct misleads people most. If you go into a people question looking for who is at fault, you'll invent one, and then you'll pick the option that manages them.
Whereas the situations are nearly always structural. An unclear boundary, an unstated assumption, a measurement that pulls 2 people apart, an instrument with no field for the truth.
So the reading habit that helps is to assume everybody in the STEM is competent and acting reasonably, and then ask what arrangement would make reasonable people produce this outcome.
Picture Tomas Iwu, a delivery lead with 9 years in logistics, who scored below target on people twice while passing process comfortably both times. He knew every tool. He kept choosing the decisive option.
And the fix wasn't more study. It was one question written on a card. What produced this situation, and have I actually found out yet?
One honest caveat, because there's a real limit to this heuristic. It's not always wrong to act fast. If somebody is unsafe, or a regulatory deadline is hours away, you act and diagnose afterwards.
So who should lean on the diagnostic reflex? Anyone whose people misses are the confident manager answer. If your misses are instead about not knowing what an enabler says, that's a content gap, and the reflex won't save it.
And the score report tells you which, because it rates each domain separately and gives guidance whether you passed or not.
And one practical note on how to use these 8. Don't reread them and nod. Cover the answer, decide out loud what you would do first, and only then read on. Recognition feels like knowledge and isn't.
Which is the same trap as the whole domain, actually. Reading a scenario and agreeing with the explanation is recognition. Producing the answer cold is the thing being tested.
If one thing survives today, make it this. In the people domain, the right answer is nearly always the one that finds out, and the wrong answer is nearly always the one that decides.
Find out first, then decide.
If these reps are the thing that finally made the people domain click, subscribing keeps the process and business environment drills coming as we build them, and it costs you nothing. So tell me before you go, which of those 8 did you get wrong, and did you pick the decisive one? Go write that card. This is River, and I will see you at the process drill.